Hey y'all, I hope you're hungry because today we're making butter chicken. Vegan, of course, using oyster mushrooms in place of the chicken. They're just as meaty, but even more delicious. This recipe is actually quite easy to make because we're gonna be using some tools to help us with the prep. We're gonna serve it with naan, which we will also make fresh, because when you usually go to an Indian restaurant, the naan is not vegan, but today it is. This whole butter chicken is full of anti-inflammatory ingredients to make you feel your absolute best. Now, if you haven't already, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. Okay, now we can get started. For our ingredients, we are using oyster mushrooms, coconut milk, a blend of amazing aromatic and fragrant spices, tomato sauce, our aromatics, which include onion, garlic, and ginger. Our first step for this recipe is to prepare our aromatics, which are the onion and the garlic, along with the ginger. Now, because this is a butter chicken and we want a silky, smooth sauce, we're gonna use the food processor to mince, almost make a paste with the onions, the garlic, and the ginger, which also makes our lives a lot easier. Now that we have our aromatic paste all chip-chopped, is that a word? Now that we have our onions and stuff all minced, we can start cooking. Oh, but before we do, it is incredibly important to measure out your spices. I've actually already measured out the spices, but it is so important when you're cooking, especially if you're using more than 2 ingredients, to measure the spices before you start cooking. Now for this recipe, we're gonna saute those onions first and then add the spices. And I don't wanna take 10 minutes trying to measure out spices while I'm cooking, while the food is already on the stove. So measure them out ahead of time. Here we have a blend of garam masala, which is the main spice blend we're using, Kashmiri chili, cardamom, cumin, coriander, and even a little bit of cinnamon. It's all measured. We've got this, so now we can cook. Warm 1 tablespoon of vegan butter in a Dutch oven or heavy bottom pot. Add your onions and garlic mixture and saute that until it is golden and fragrant, or as mine did, turning green, but that's okay. Then add in the spices, allowing them to toast for about 30 seconds. Lastly, you can add the tomato sauce, coconut milk, sugar to balance out all the flavor, and salt. Let it gently simmer for 20 to 30 minutes while you prepare your mushrooms. Now we find ourselves at my favorite part of the process, the oyster mushrooms. Now, oyster mushrooms are so easy to make. You don't have to prep them too much. Actually, for this butter chicken recipe, I want them to stay whole, so I'm gonna do as little prep as I need to do. To clean these mushrooms, I'm gonna be using a damp paper towel, basically to just wipe clean the tops as much as possible, especially when I see something that might be dirt. These did come from a bulk bin at the grocery store. I don't know how many other people's hands were in that bulk bin, but we will be cooking them, so of course, the germs will be destroyed. Oyster mushrooms actually come in a lot of different shapes and sizes and colors. These are the typical gray oysters that you will often find at the grocery store and at your local farmer's market. However, you might have noticed if you ever bought mushrooms at your farmer's market, they might also come in different colors like pink and yellow and even blue. Each of those colors have a different texture and flavor profile. These gray oysters are perfect though. They're meaty, they've got an amazing flavor, they're nice and juicy even, and they are the most common. So get whatever you can put your hands on. You might see them having these large gills like these, or just a few days ago, I bought a huge box of mushrooms with the tiniest little caps. They were so cute. Either will work for this recipe. This bottom piece of mushroom, this is like the base. This is where it's attached to the growing substrate when it is growing not in a lab, but they grow these indoors on like pine chips and stuff. So anyway, this is where it attaches and it is very tough. We do not want to eat this part just because it's just too tough. However, it still does have flavor. So you can cut this off and save it to make mushroom broth, which is what I always do. I always stick it in my freezer or my fridge, and when my container gets large, I make a broth. It's very nutritious. Now, for this recipe, I would really love for the mushrooms to stay as one piece as much as possible. And so in order to accomplish that, I'm only gonna cut off the very base of this where it was attached. All right, guys, I need you to get a cast iron skillet. If you don't already have one, this is your sign to go out and buy one. I will link some below that I love because these are necessary in your kitchen. Cast iron skillets will last you a lifetime and even longer. You can pass them down to your children and your grandchildren. That's how long they last. So we're gonna use 2 cast iron skillets for these mushrooms. We're gonna use this pretty mustard yellow skillet to saute the mushrooms, and then we are gonna put another cast iron skillet on top to press them down. That pressing of the mushrooms is the key to create the tastiest, meatiest mushrooms. Oh, they're so good. I'm only gonna do like maybe, I don't know, half a tablespoon of vegan butter. Yeah, it's probably half a tablespoon. We don't need too much because we do want this to stay as healthy as possible. Anti-inflammatory cooking, of course, which means we don't want to rely too heavily on highly processed oils. Olive oil would be the best choice if you're going to do anti-inflammatory cooking. But again, I'm just using a little bit for this dish. Coconut oil, because it is made of medium chain triglycerides, even though it's a saturated fat, it does seem to have protective and anti-inflammatory properties in the human body. So coconut oil is good, especially in moderation. I wouldn't eat too much coconut oil all the time. Olive oil is still my preferred cooking oil. If you've ever eaten oyster mushrooms, you already know that they have so much flavor on their own. However, we're gonna amplify that flavor just a tad. Let me add these mushrooms directly to the pan. Look how pretty. They are huge, but they are so beautiful. I'm gonna put this mushroom cap side down and try to squeeze these 3 in here as much as I can. I love that sound. I'm not gonna season these just yet because, well, I can put a little bit of salt on them, but I'm not gonna do the full seasoning only because they're so big. I want them to cook down a little bit so that when I put the other skillet on top, it doesn't just stick. The spices don't just stick to it. I'm gonna do a little bit of salt because when you cook with salt, it helps to bring out the moisture of the vegetables. So a little bit of salt, and then we're gonna put our other cast iron skillet. Where is it? Where are you? Oh, here we are. We're gonna put this other cast iron skillet directly on top. Press it down. And you were using a cast iron skillet for this because it is so nice and heavy. I actually could make it even heavier. Like I could put this cast iron, this enamel cast iron on top. Okay, that works. I'm gonna cook it like so for probably 5 minutes till the mushrooms have reduced. As you can see, they are releasing a lot of their liquid, the water already. That liquid release is just gonna help them cook faster and bring out more of that flavor. And then we're gonna remove this cast iron skillet and add the spices directly to the mushroom and continue to reduce it. It is so easy. They're gonna be so delicious. Okay, my friends, it's now time to taste. Okay, first off, the sauce, which is rich and creamy. Oh my goodness. Wow. Wow, okay. And the mushrooms, which are so, oh my gosh, so meaty. Snack break. So good. All we have to do now is put the mushrooms into the sauce, and we're gonna let it sit and we're gonna let it stay hot and get all extra married and delicious. And in the meantime, while we do that, we will make our naan bread. I recently switched to only eating organic flour. That's because usually white flour is enriched with all sorts of stuff that we do not need in our diets, artificial forms of vitamins. We don't need those, and I think I was having some sensitivity to flour because of those things. Now, I'm not quite sure, but the first step to figuring out is to simply switch to organic flour. I've long been a fan of spelt flour, which is why I used a bit of it in this naan recipe. Spelt has less gluten, so I didn't want to only use it. And it's also a whole grain, which would make it a little bit denser and a little bit heartier than the white flour. but a little bit in there is certainly nice. It adds an even more nutty flavor and makes it a little bit extra delicious in my opinion. This might be my new favorite recipe. It is so delicious. The mushrooms, they're complex, they're meaty, they're full of flavor, and that vegan butter chicken sauce is literally everything. I can drink it with a spoon, or, I mean, come on, the way it tastes when you scoop it up with the vegan naan, I mean, oh, sublime. You guys, this vegan naan, it is chewy. It is so absolutely pillowy and soft and delicious, and the brown bits are crispy. Oh, it's so good. It's so good. Wholesome plant-based diets automatically tend to be very anti-inflammatory. That is because we're avoiding processed food as much as possible. I have this thing about 80-20. 80% of the time I will eat really healthy, unprocessed or minimally processed plants like my beans, whole grains, nuts, seeds, all of that. And no more than 20% of the time I will include processed foods or things that are less healthy, like baked goods at home or eating out at a less healthy restaurant. I don't let it go over 20% of the time though, because I want to be my healthiest self, of course. But if you just focus on that 80-20 and make sure that you're eating as many plants as possible, then you will be getting the anti-inflammatory benefits of a healthy vegan diet. Speaking of eating healthy, you're definitely going to want to tune in next week because I'm going to be sharing the 5 foods that I eat every week. The ones that are the most anti-inflammatory, high protein, high fiber, make me feel my ultimate best and thrive every day. Tune in for that. It's gonna be like a what I eat in a day video, but over the course of a week. So tune in. I know you're gonna love this. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button, turn on notifications, and I'll see you guys next week. Thanks for watching. Bye. Ooh, time for me to dig in. This is gonna be messy, y'all. It's gonna be messy. Ooh.